All right, so section 1.4, let's take a look. Again, it's kind of like what we've done before. We're going to go through this quite a bit. Let's everybody listen now. You should not be talking. Thank you. This is how it should be right here. So, what I was saying is we're going to do a lot of definitions. The first chapter is all about that. It's all about doing definitions, okay? Because we're going to use these words, all the stuff that we're going to talk about today. This is probably, from what we've done up to this point, today's probably the most important day, all right, up to this point. Because we're going to be using a ton of the stuff that we're talking about today later on, all right? Like those incident postulates, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's important, I guess, in the grand scheme of geometry, but as far as we're concerned, it's really not that important, to tell you the truth. Stuff we're doing today is definitely important. So, it's, again, learning the language of geometry, learning how to write it, okay, learning how to speak it, and learning how to read it. All right, so let's see what we want to do. This one right here. So, I'm just going to draw a line like this. Put a little arrow on the end of it. And let's put some letters in here. Let's see what I want. Let's put arrows on the end of both of these. Oh, no, not again. Yes. You can't see? Do I need to back up? Does that work right there? Okay. Thanks. All right, let's put some letters in here. This is slanted a little bit different than the book does it, but it doesn't really matter. Let's put an A and then a B. And let's put a C. Yeah, and we'll put a little K on the top. So first of all, just as a little review, okay, we've done this before. This is a line, all right? So what's the easiest way to name this line right here? Line K, yeah. We could just say line K. That would be a super easy way to name this line. There's a bunch of other ways we could name this line too, aren't there? All right, so remember, to name a line, how many points if you know the points on the line, how many points do we use? We use 2 points to name a line. And it doesn't matter what order you put the points, okay? I'm not going to write all these down, but just take a look at it. I could name it line DA, and I could go backwards. I could go the other way. I could name it line AD. I could name it DB, BD, DC, CB, and you can keep going. You can go AB, you can call it AC, you can go BC, you can go CB. You get it? All right, so there's all these different options of what you could call this particular line. All right, or you could just call it line K. Now, they have a thing, I'll be honest with you. This is the first time, I've taught out of, 3, maybe 4 geometry books. I think 4 different geometry books. I've never seen this before. And they call it a half line. Now, they give you some crazy looking definition for it, but basically it would be this. If you think a half line, you're thinking half of a line. But can you take half of a line? Because what's true about a line? A line keeps doing what? The line never ends and it keeps on going in both directions. Is there a middle to a line that keeps on going forever? No, there's not, okay? If it keeps on going forever, you can't take half of the line, but what they're doing is basically this. They're saying, let's listen now. Okay, if you take a half line, like if I go from A to C, okay, this is how you show a half line. You put a little arrow on top of it, but just one arrow going to the right. It's not a full line. Now, watch what they do. They put a little open dot on the end of it. What that means is this. A half line is talking about all the points that are to the right or on this side, the C side of the A. Does that make sense? It means all the points that are to the right, we'll call it to the right since my line's going that way. So all the lines to the right of A, or all the points, to the right of A would be considered a half line. Now, a half line does not include point A. So I'm not including it, but I'm just going as close as I possibly can past A and then keep on going forever. But can you get right next to A? Is there a spot where you could put it right next to A if it's a line? Because think about it. Remember, a line doesn't have any width. It doesn't have any depth, right? So if I had a point like right here, for those on YouTube, I'm just putting my fingers up in the air, okay? So if I had a point like right here, can you have a point that gets closer to A? Sure, gets closer, closer, closer. But can you have a point that's right next to A? Well, think about it. If it doesn't have any width, if I have a point here, I can always take half of that, couldn't I? Okay, I could always take half of that. I could always take half of that. Is there any place in there where I couldn't take half of it anymore? Because remember, a point doesn't have any width at all. So you could always get closer, 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 closer to A without hitting it. Wouldn't you agree? How close could you get? You could get infinitely close to A without actually touching it. That's what a half line is. All right, we're not going to really do a bunch with half lines, so I don't want to take a whole lot of time with that. But we are going to talk about something that looks very similar to this, but this means it does not include A, but it includes all the points on this side of A. That would be considered a half line. Well, then that would be a little bit different, right? So CA, if you do CA, now it doesn't matter if the line, if you're going left or right, you always put that arrow to the right up here, okay, when we do this. So if I put half line CA, what is that? That means it starts at C. I tell you what, let's do it like this. It starts at C. Yes. No, just stay here. I'm in the middle of something. Okay, watch this. If that's C, it doesn't look like a C, and this is A, this would be half line CA. You see that? This is half line CA. What does that mean? It starts just on the other side of C, but it keeps on going through A. That's what that means. What does half line AC mean? Well, we'll call that an open circle, and it's everything on that side of A. All right? So it doesn't include A, but it includes everything on the other side of A. All right, John?
You're writing like CA, like line CA, you put a line over it. You put the arrow, same direction.
It doesn't, no. You always put it to the right. Okay, so, I mean, because you could have a line that's like going like this, right? Or you could do it like straight up and down. And so it doesn't matter which direction, like CA is going to our left, would you agree? But the arrow goes to the right. So when the notation, the way we write it, this arrow will always go to the right, no matter which direction our half line's going. Jason? Does the open circle do what? Well, it matters because it's showing, do you remember when you did number lines and you said, like X is greater than 3. Do you remember this stuff? You did this in Algebra 1, didn't you? Yep. So it's kind of like that. So watch. If I had 2, 3, 4, 5. If I asked you to graph, let's do it in a different color. If I asked you to graph X is greater than 3, do you remember what you would do on this graph? Put what kind of a circle here? You put an open circle. What does that mean? That means everything to the right, okay? Everything to the right of 3, but doesn't include 3. Remember I kept on going half, 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 okay? How close can you get to 3? Well, I could go 3.1. Where you're like, well, wait a minute, I can get closer than that. I could do what? 3.01. I could go 3.001. Isn't that getting closer and closer to 1? How many zeros could I put in there? An infinite number, right? So you can't get right next to 3, but you can get pretty close to it. Does that make sense? You could get infinitely close to it. So this kind of stuff that we did way back in Algebra 1, that was last year for you, wasn't it? Okay, so it wasn't way back. It was way back for me. For you, it was last year, all right? So it's kind of like this. That's what the open circle represents, okay? It just does not include that particular point. That's all it means. All right, let's get off of that. It's really not that super important. The next word that we're going to do is pretty important because we're going to use it a lot. You didn't learn this? Well, well, now you learned it. All right. We're up here. We're up here. The discussion is right here. So let's do another thing that you will use a lot of. So that one wasn't super important because I've never really seen them talk about a half line in any geometry book that I've ever taught out of. This is the first time I saw that. But this one right here is in every geometry book that you'll ever see. All right. And it's close to what we just did with a half line, but this is a little different. Okay. I'm going to put a line with one arrow on it. Now watch what I'm going to do at the end of this. I'm going to put a solid dot right there. That means it includes that point right there. All right. So let's see if they have any pictures. They use SPNR. It doesn't really make any difference. I'll tell you what, I'll just go A, B, and C again. All right. So let's go, whoops, it's supposed to be a dot. Let's go A, B, C. Now there's a big difference between this. Well, I don't know if it's a big difference. It's a subtle difference between this and what we just did, all right? This right here, it actually starts at A. Remember we talked about a line? Does a line have a beginning? No. Does it have an end? No. But this thing right here, and I'll tell you what it is in a second. I'm up here. So this right here has an end. Or a starting point, however you want to call it. We actually call it an end point. We don't call it a starting point, but it kind of starts here, doesn't it? And keeps on going in that direction forever, all right? So it does include point A. The half line did not include that A right there. It got really close to it, but it didn't include it. This one actually does include A.
So you're saying that the closed circle includes
Yes. The closed circle, it's like it's on it. And an open circle, it's not on it. Right. Yeah. Is it what? No. This is different. I haven't said what it is yet. Okay. But this is the difference between a half line and this thing right here. Okay. And I might as well just tell you right now. We call this a ray. All right. And it's very important. Okay. Because we're going to use it a lot. So this is a ray and it has an endpoint. So a ray has an endpoint. And this point right here, we would call the endpoint. End point. Even though it kind of looks like it starts there, right? It looks like it starts here and it keeps on going in that direction. We don't call it a starting point. We just call it the end point, all right? So that's what we call that thing. We call that the end point. Now, we need to figure out how to write a ray. Now, the half line, we put a little arrow with an open circle. This time, let's call this ray AC. Just like a line, we just use 2 points to name a ray, all right? And this time, we just do it. Now, we don't put like a solid dot right here. You just draw a line with an arrow. That's how we would say it. So we wouldn't write the word ray AC. This is our notation. This is how we would write it. Everybody got that? You could also call it something else. Or, I'm going to put an or right there. Now, when you write a ray, you have to start at the end point. I can't say ray CA and ray AC are the same thing. They're not. Because the very first letter has got to be the endpoint. I'll just shorten it, okay? So the first letter has to be the endpoint. So ray AC and ray CA would be two different rays, wouldn't it? Okay, ray CA would start here at C and keep on going forever in that direction. But ray AC starts here and it keeps on going in that direction through point C. Now, there's another way that we could name this ray right here. What do you think that would be? Where do you think it's, well, it starts where? Where does this ray start? At A. What other point does it go through? It goes through B. So I could call it ray AB. It's the same exact ray. Because it doesn't stop at B, does it? It doesn't stop at C. What's it do? It just goes through them and it keeps on going. That's right. Okay? It keeps on going. All right? So it has an endpoint where it stops, right there, or starts, however you want to look at it, and it keeps on going through here. I could have 15 other points in here, and I could name them a whole bunch of different things. I could name it AB, I could name it AC. If I put a D in there somewhere, I could name it ray AD. Make sense? But I can't go backwards. A line, you could go backwards. It doesn't matter because it doesn't have an end, right? It doesn't matter. So you just use any 2 points, and you can use the reverse of it. But a ray, you must write it like this. You don't need to put a little dot at the end. right, and compare it to like the open circle with the half line. You just write it like this. But the endpoint has to go first. You with me? Any questions on this so far before we go on? It's pretty easy, right? We're just learning a new word, learning how to write it, learning how to say it. That's it. Yep.
For the headline, it has a circle over the
Yeah.
like when we name it has a circle.
Yep. Yeah, right there. There's a little circle on it, but array is a little different. You don't put like a solid dot. You just draw a line with an arrow. That's all you do, okay? That's the only thing different. Are you kidding me? You guys just came from lunch. You had all the time in the world to go to the bathroom before you came in here. You have your pass? Fill it out. Give it to me. Oh my gosh, you don't know how annoying this is.
Right, like if he's trying to teach y'all, y'all just not listening. I'm listening. I got everything written down.
Now I gotta stop everything. It's the second time I've had you leave here. All right, let's take a look at the next word. Let's do this. This is kind of I don't know. It's a definition. It's really not that huge of a deal. Let's do this. Let's put an S. Whoops. S P R. All right, there's a definition of a word, and it seems kind of silly to even do this, and I'm not going to read off the whole definition. If I read the whole definition to you, you looked in the book, you're like, what in the world are they talking about? So I'm just going to try to bring it down to our level, okay? Not your level, but my level as well, all right? So if you talk about something that is between, all right, something that's between. So take a look at it. Which letter or which point do you think is between two other points? John, what do you think? Yeah, P is between what and what? S and R, right. Does it mean it's necessarily right in the middle of S and R? No, it just means S has to be on one side of the line, R has to be on the other side of the line, and then that means that P is between S and R. Okay? We'll use that phrase quite a bit. That's why we're going over it. But really, that's not that big of a deal, is it? All right? It's pretty simple, isn't it? Okay, if I put some other letters in here, put an X and a Y, now you got a whole bunch of stuff that's between, right? You could say that X is between what and what? S and P. You could also say X is between S and Y and S and R. You get it? Okay, as long as one's on one side of the line, one's on the other side of the line, then you could say that those letters are between those 2 points. Make sense, John? Did I answer it? Okay. That was pretty simple. That was kind of boring one. Now, let's do this one. This is a pretty good one. Let's see which is next. All right, let's talk about rays again. All right? So let me draw a ray right here and here. And since we talked about between, we'll go L, M, and N. All right? I'm just making these letters up. I don't think that's in the book like that, but that's mine. Yes, ma'am. Say that again. Well, I didn't say this was a ray. We're going to talk about rays, okay? Now, I want you to look at this. You could actually see some rays in here. Now, the whole thing is not a ray because a ray it doesn't go in both directions. It has a starting point, right, or an end point. So you could call this, let's say this is our end point. You could, like from here to here, what would you call that? Ray what? Say it. MN. Very good. So you could have ray MN. And how do we notate? We put that little arrow on top, right? What's another ray that has an endpoint at M on this particular situation? Go ahead. ML. An ML. That's right. So I'm going to put an and in here. ML. Ray ML, correct? Now, it doesn't matter that this is going to the left. We still always do our notation with that thing going to the right. Make sense? Okay, we talked about that before. Now, we have a name for these two rays. They both are going in complete opposite directions. Do you see it? And it forms a straight line, doesn't it? So this ray starting at M going through N, this ray starting at M and going through L, they're on the same line and they go in opposite directions. So guess what we call these? We call these opposite what? Rays. All right, so again, we're just doing definitions here. We're just learning the language of geometry. These are opposite rays. And they may ask you that in the homework assignment. They give you something like this. They'll say, name two sets, or name two opposite rays. You would say ray MN and ray ML. When you write a ray, always make sure you put that little arrow on top of it. You got it? Doesn't matter if it's going to the left or right. You always, when you do this notation, you'll always draw that to the right like that. Okay? So that's opposite rays. Let's do another one. What about this? What if I talked about starting at L and not going all the way through, right, forever and ever, but what if I stopped at N? What in the world is that? So let me just redraw it. I'm just going to make it just a little bit bigger. So, I'm sorry, I don't want arrows. I want here and here. I made this a little bit bigger. So this is L and this is N right there. Now, is this a line? Casey? It's a line segment. Yeah, you cheated. You went ahead and looked, didn't you? I'm just kidding about the cheating part. Wayne, you going or not?
Yeah, or what?
Do you guys ask in the middle of football practice to go to the bathroom? Do you ask in the middle of football practice to go to the bathroom? And your coach lets you go? Coaches are soft nowadays. When I played, that would never happen. All right, let's take a look. Shh. All right, hey, that's enough. Guys, okay. Shh. Hey. Okay, that's how it should be. I don't know why. I take 2 seconds to say something, you guys go nuts. All right, let's take a look at this. This is called a line segment. It's not an entire line because a line keeps on going, right? It's got 2 endpoints, exactly right. So a line segment has 2 endpoints. So if you wanted to, you could come up here, and there's several different line segments here. From L to M. If it started at L and ended at M, that would be line segment LM. You follow me? Now, what do you think about, does it matter what order you put it when you write it down? So if I said line segment LM, is that the same as, it's an N, isn't it? LN. Is that the same thing as NL? Yeah, it doesn't matter which one you start because they're both endpoints, right? Doesn't matter which one's the first one, which one's the last one. So for this, but here's the little symbol that we use for a line segment. We're learning a lot of different symbols. We have a symbol for line, for a half line, for ray. Now this is a line, or this is the symbol for line segment, and it's very simple. Just put a little line over top of it. You don't have to put dots at the end of it. Okay, just put a little line with no arrows. That means line segment LN. Okay, I'll put an or in here because you could name this either one. It doesn't matter. You could name it line segment LN or you could name it line segment NL. Pretty easy, right? All right. Let's see. What else we got? Oh, yeah, we got this stuff. I'm going to skip a little bit. That plane separation posture, I'm going to skip that. There's definitions for half plane, for edge, for opposite half planes. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to go right to the thing that's really, really important. And we will literally be talking about this like all year long. Okay? Maybe not every day, but all right, now you're being goofballs. Trying to go PG so I don't get anybody mad at me. All right, let's take a look at this. If this is B, this is A, and let's make this C. How about that? What do we have here? We have 2 of something that we've talked about already today. What do you think we have?
A line segment. And
But you got arrows. You got
90
arrows.
degree angle.
No, it's not 90 degrees. It's in a plane, but we talked about it today.
Rays.
We have 2 rays. Yeah, we got 2 rays. All right, did you say that?
We got rays.
Did you say it? Oh, okay. Oh, it is in a plane. That's true. And there's points. All right, very good. You guys are great. Just listen now. Okay, so you have 2 rays, but they have something called a common endpoint. When it means in common, that means they both have the same exact endpoint. Now, we have a special name for that common endpoint. By the way, what is the common endpoint here? What is it? B, point B. Okay? So that's the common endpoint. We have a name for that, and I'll put a little arrow, point to it. We call that the vertex. But what is the whole thing called? The whole thing actually has a name, and you could probably figure that out. You've done enough. You've seen enough. What is this whole thing called? This combination of 2 rays with a common endpoint? Yes, exactly right. It's an angle. All right? You knew that, right? Even without taking any geometry classes. You probably already knew that word. You've heard of angles, right? Okay, it's not a 90-degree angle. It's just an angle. Yeah, we'll talk about the certain kind of angles at some other point. Right now, I'm just talking about what an angle is. So this whole thing, this combination of 2 rays with a common endpoint, that's called an angle. All right, pretty simple. Now, we know one part of the angle is called the vertex. That's where the 2 rays come together. By the way, let's do this. Let's see if you remember anything about rays from 5 minutes ago. Let's name the 2 rays. So if I name the 2 rays, what would they be, Jason? Yep. Ray BC would be one of the rays, and ray BA would be the other ray. Everybody see that? Starts at B, goes through A, starts at B, goes through C. And they both have the B in it. That's the endpoint. That's why it's first, okay, for the ray. We call the rays the sides of the angle. Sides of the angle. So how many sides does this angle have? 2 sides. It's got this one and it's got this one. And they're rays. Remember, the sides of an angle are a ray. Everybody got it? All right. Again, it's just definitions. We're just learning words. It's basically all we're doing here. And learning notation, how to write, how to read, all that kind of stuff. But we're doing it in geometry. Let me ask you this. Or I'll tell you what, I got to do this first. Let's name the angle. I'll show you how to name the angle. And we have a symbol. Again, we got another symbol for this stuff. Here's the symbol. It looks like an angle. Do you see that? So that's the symbol for angle. And we name the angle. This vertex always has to be in the middle when we do the angle. So I take one point, we'll call it A. B is the vertex, that has to be in the middle. What do you think our other point is? C. So this is how you would name this angle right here. Or, in this particular case, you could just use one letter. Which of these letters do you think would be important to use on this angle? B, because it's the vertex, okay? You could just call it angle B if you wanted to. You with me on that? Okay. So it's really important you know about angles because I can't stress how much we're going to be doing stuff with angles later on, all right? So that's how you name it. What if I gave you this situation? What if I gave you this and then this? Kind of looks like what we already did so far, but watch what I'm going to do. What do you think I'm going to do? Put another one right there. Okay. Now we do have 3 rays. That's very true. Tell you what, let's just call this B again. Let's go A, B, what's this? C, and D. Now, watch very carefully. We only got a couple minutes left, so I want you to watch carefully. Let me ask you this first. How many angles do I have here? Yeah, I got 3. Most people would say 2, okay? And that's a common answer that most people would give, where it's 2 angles. It looks like you got one right here and you got one right here. But you also have that big one right here, don't you? So you actually have 3 angles here. So could I call this angle B? Well, how do you know which one I'm talking about? Am I talking about this angle? Am I talking about this one? Okay, or am I talking about this little one right here? It doesn't matter? Sure it does. If I want to talk about, because there's 3 angles here, right? There's too much talking. Let's listen. There's 3 angles here. If I want to specifically talk about one of those 3 angles, I can't just say angle B, because I don't know if I'm talking about the whole big one. I don't know if I'm talking about this one here. I don't know if I'm talking about this little skinny one down here. So I can't just say angle B. Does that make sense? Because I don't know which one I'm referring to. But I can use the 3 letters. So let's this top angle, this angle right here. Okay, what would I call that? No, an angle, 3 points. Vertex has to be in the middle. Let's finish this up real quick. So I could call it angle ABC, that one. What about this little skinny one down the bottom? What would I call that one? Now B's got to be in the middle. The vertex has to be in the middle. What do I call the whole big angle? The whole big angle. ABD. Okay? All right. I got a little more to do. We'll do that tomorrow. I won't give you homework tonight. Okay? I'll give you homework tomorrow, though. Okay?